Montage is the determination of the whole, the third Bergsonian level, by means of continuities, cutting and false continuities. Eisenstein continually reminds us that montage is the whole of the film, the idea. But why should the whole be the object of montage? Between the beginning and the end of a film something changes, something has changed. But this whole which changes, this time or duration, only seems to be capable of being apprehended indirectly, in relation to the movement images which express it. Montage is the operation which bears on the movement images to release the whole from them, that is, the image of time. It is a necessarily indirect image, since it is deduced from movement images and their relationships. Montage does not come afterwards, for all that. Indeed, it is necessary that the whole should be primary in a certain way, that it should be presupposed. Particularly since, as we have seen, in Griffith's Time and After, the movement image in itself only rarely relates to the mobility of the camera, but arises more frequently from a succession of fixed shots which presupposes montage. If we consider the three levels, that of the determination of closed systems, that of the movement which is established between the parts of a system, and that of the changing whole which is expressed in movement, there is a circulation between the three which enables each to contain or prefigure the others. Some directors are therefore able to insert the montage into the shot or even into the frame, and thus attach little importance to montage in itself. But the specificity of the three operations nevertheless survives, even in their mutual interiority. What amounts to montage, in itself or in something else, is the indirect image of time, of duration. Not a homogeneous time or a spatialized duration like that which Bergson attacks, but an effective duration and time which flow from the articulation of the movement images, as they appear in Bergson's earlier texts. We must leave aside for the moment the task of ascertaining whether there are, in addition, direct images which might be called time images, to what extent they would be separate from movement images, and to what extent, conversely, they would be based on certain unknown aspects of these images. Montage is composition, the assemblage, agencement, of movement images as constituting an indirect image of time. Now, since the most ancient philosophy, there have been many different ways in which time can be conceived as a function of movement, in relation to movement, in various arrangements. We are likely to come across this variety again in the different schools of montage. If we give to Griffith the distinction, not of having invented montage, but of having raised it to the level of a specific dimension, it seems that four main trends can be distinguished: the organic trend of the American school, the dialectic trend of the Soviet school, the quantitative trend of the pre-war French school, and the intensive trend of the German expressionist school. In each case the directors may be very different, however, they have a community of themes, problems and preoccupations, in short, an ideal community which is all that is needed, in the cinema as elsewhere, to found concepts of schools or trends. We will now describe briefly each of these four schools of montage. Griffith conceived of the composition of movement images as an organization, an organism, a great organic unity. This was his discovery. The organism is, firstly, unity in diversity, that is, a set of differentiated parts. There are men and women, rich and poor, town and country, north and south, interiors and exteriors, etc. These parts are taken in binary relationships which constitute a parallel alternate montage, the image of one part succeeding another according to a rhythm. But the part and the set must also necessarily enter into a relationship, exchange their relative dimensions. The insertion of the close-up in this sense does not merely involve the enlargement of a detail, but produces a miniaturization of the set, a reduction of the scene, to the scale of a child, for example, like the baby who is present during the action of the massacre. And, more generally, by showing the way in which the characters live the scene of which they form part, the close-up endows the objective set with a subjectivity which equals or even surpasses it, not just the close-ups of soldiers which alternate with the long shots of the battle, or the terrified close-ups of the young girl chased by a Negro in Birth of a Nation, but also the close-up of the young woman who identifies with the images of her thought in Enoch Arden. 1. Finally, the parts must necessarily act and react on each other in order to show how they simultaneously enter into conflict and threaten the unity of the organic set, and how they overcome the conflict or restore the unity. From some parts actions arise which oppose good and bad, but from other parts convergent actions arise which come to the aid of the good. Through all these actions the form of a dual develops and passes through different stages. Indeed, it is in the nature of the organic set that it should continually be threatened. The accusation raised against the Negroes in Birth of a Nation is that of wanting to shatter the newly won unity of the United States by using the South's defeat to their own advantage. The convergent actions tend towards a single end, reaching the site of the duel to reverse its outcome, to save innocence or reconstitute the compromised unity, like the gallop of the horsemen who come to the rescue of the besieged, or the advance of the rescuer who recovers the girl on the thawing ice, orphans of the storm. It is the third aspect of montage, concurrent or convergent montage, which alternates the moments of two actions which will come back together again. And the more the actions converge, the closer the junction approaches, the more rapid the alternation becomes, accelerated montage. Admittedly, in Griffith, the junction does not always take place, and the innocent young girl is often condemned, almost sadistically, because she could only find her place and salvation in an inorganic abnormal union. The Chinese opium addict arrives too late in Broken Blossoms. This time it is a perverse acceleration which forestalls convergence. These are the three forms of montage, or of rhythmic alternation: the alternation of differentiated parts, that of relative dimensions, and that of convergent actions. A powerful organic representation produces the set and the parts in this way. The American cinema draws from it its most solid form, from the general situation to the re-established or transformed situation through the intermediary of a duel, of a convergence of actions. American montage is organico-active. It is wrong to criticize it as being subordinate to the narration. It is the reverse, for the narrativity flows from this conception of montage. In Intolerance, Griffith discovers that the organic representation can be immense, encompassing not merely families and a society, but different epochs and civilizations. The parts thrown together by parallel montage are the civilizations themselves. The relative dimensions which are interchanged range from the king's city to the capitalist's office. And the convergent actions are not just the duels proper to each civilization, the chariot race in the Babylonian episode, the race between the car and the train in the modern episode, but the two races themselves converge through the centuries in an accelerated montage which superimposes Babylon and America. Never again will such an organic unity be achieved, by means of rhythm, from parts which are so different and actions which are so distant. Whenever time has been considered in relation to movement, whenever it has been defined as the measure of movement, two aspects of time have been discovered, which are chronozygens, on the one hand, time as whole, as great circle or spiral, which draws together the set of movement in the universe, on the other, time as interval, which indicates the smallest unit of movement or action. Time as whole, the set of movement in the universe, is the bird which hovers, continually increasing its circle. But the numerical unit of movement is the beating of a wing, the continually diminishing interval between two movements or two actions. Time as interval is the accelerated variable present, and time as whole is the spiral open at both ends, the immensity of past and future. Infinitely dilated, the present would become the whole itself; infinitely contracted, the whole would happen in the interval. What originates from montage, or from the composition of movement images, is the idea, that indirect image of time, the whole which winds up and unwinds the set of the parts in the famous wellspring of Ptolemus, and the interval between actions which gets smaller and smaller in the accelerated montage of the races.